is up, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? It is I, yes sirree, the one and only Kenneth the K-Rock Klein. That's a little bit of a weird intro. Kenneth the K-Rock Klein. Yeah, I think I'm sounding a little bit differently on these introductions, but it is Kenneth the K-Rock Klein here for episode 53 of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock. And folks, I'll tell you what, I should be in a bit of an upbeat, positive mood after Saturday, and of course I am, although there was some bittersweetness to it as well. Folks, we're going to be doing some NFL recapping. We're going to be talking about my 5 thoughts on what I saw from the wildcard formats, all the games that we talked about as well. Just some 5 things that I think made the wildcard interesting and something to keep an eye out for. Then we're going to be discussing one of my dream playoff matchups, which is about to happen this weekend. I don't know if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday, depending on when the NFL decides to schedule the divisional rounds and everything as well. But we're going to be talking about the Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes, that's right. The big matchup between Kansas City and Houston. A little bit of a rematch from the regular season a couple of weeks ago. We'll give my thoughts on whether or not I think the Texans have a legitimate chance to beat the Chiefs this time around, unlike last time. And then we're going to be discussing, potentially giving out my predictions for the other playoff matchups as well. And then, folks, I got to be a little bit honest here. This podcast is going to be a bit difficult for me because there has been one subject that has been on my mind for quite some time. So I'm going to be a little bit of a psychologist here, therapist or whatever. And just kind of, talking about something that had been bothering me for a while. One of my worst fears in life, unfortunately, has in fact happened over the weekend. So I'm going to be breaking it down, everything that's been going on, in my life. Nothing really major, nothing really significant that has hurt me or possibly, could be life-altering in a way. But something that had just been on my mind and, a question that I had about this certain situation. Talking about with regards to friends and, their life choices and everything. So I'm going to be talking about that in this podcast as well. But for the most part, guys, we're going to be talking about the NFL in particular. And you will not want to miss out on my thoughts on the wild card format. So, guys, got to keep it real. We're going to be doing this podcast again. Reminder, you can listen to it on my YouTube channel, KWCLINE91, along with Spotify and Podbean. So, guys, stay tuned. We're going to step aside, but when we come back, we're going to be breaking down the wildcard rounds, things that I take away from that. So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. And I am so glad that I'm doing this podcast today because I'll tell you what, folks, today was supposed to be my jury duty day, but like some of y'all probably have had a case of being called for jury duty only to find out that it just got canceled, whether the case was settled out of court or what have you. Either way, it got canceled, and I'm so glad because I really wanted to do this podcast after the weekend we just had in all of the NFL. And I'll tell you what, folks, the NFL wildcard games were kind of interesting to say the least. Not saying that they were instant classics, although you can argue that one game in particular will go down as an instant classic. And that game, ironically, when I made my predictions on my wildcard format, I actually got that one wrong. I said that Tampa Bay was going to beat Washington, but as it turns out, I got that one wrong. So Washington, the Commanders, man, I got to tell you what, they are an interesting storyline. I think they're probably the best story in all of the NFL to this point. We can look at Detroit and Kansas City. We can look at all these other teams. But I think the Washington Commanders have to be the most interesting storyline. And we'll see what happens when they have their showdown against Philadelphia in the playoff format. But before we talk about, give out my thoughts and predictions, I want to kind of give out my thoughts about the wild card games as well. And, to tell you the truth, there were some things that I took away from this wildcard format that we need to sort of digest and try to figure out, you know, the landscape of the NFL with these teams in particular. And I think we have some key teams that could really surprise, but I think we also have some teams that maybe had a run that probably shouldn't have gotten to this point as they've been exposed in a way. I'm not saying they're fraudulent, but you know what? Some of my thoughts are going to be hurtful to some people here. And the first one that I'm going to be bringing out is Justin Herbert. Now, folks, Justin Herbert only played in his second playoff game on Saturday. That was his second playoff game because you got to remember his first playoff game was when the Chargers had a massive lead over the Jacksonville Jaguars, and unfortunately, they blew it away. Jacksonville came storming back, and they ended up winning that game in a classic. And Justin Herbert really had a problem there in a sense. But, you know, this season for the Chargers, I think, was a real successful one. You know, Jim Harbaugh comes in, he's able to turn that team around, and they fight for a playoff spot, you know, maybe expected to be a contender for the AFC West division, but, you know, ultimately they do make the playoffs, as do the Denver Broncos, and we'll talk about that team in just a moment. But Justin Herbert really had himself a great season in the regular season. He only threw 3 interceptions all season long. He completed 65.9% of his passes for 3,870 total yards of passing and 23 touchdowns. So that was a remarkable achievement for Justin Herbert, his best season in his career to date ever since the former Rookie of the Year won Rookie of the Year. So you go into this game against the Texans and you're saying to yourself, oh man, Justin Herbert, 3 interceptions. You know, this should be a really good game for him. He should be okay. Well, the Texans had a very good defense, and let's just say it was not a great game for the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert goes 14 of 32 for 242 yards and 1 touchdown pass, but he also throws 4 interceptions, which gives you a quarterback rating of 40.9, which is just slightly above 39.6%, which is what you basically would do if you spike the ball every single time on every play. And he also got sacked 4 times. And, like, Justin Herbert has already played in 2 games in the postseason, but already people are starting to put him as a quarterback that can't perform in the playoffs. They're doing the same thing. They did the same thing with Dak Prescott for a while in a way. And I know that Peyton Manning in his early years had some struggles in the playoffs until he started to get going, and then it became, can Peyton Manning win the Super Bowl? Well, Justin Herbert is officially in the conversation of, can he really perform in the playoffs? Because what we have seen from Justin Herbert in his 2 playoff games is that he hasn't won a game, and it's just really unfortunate. Like, he has a passer rating of 60.7 for 515 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions in 2 playoff games in his career. So the last game against the Chargers was a real disaster. And they started off okay. Chargers got off to a 6-0 lead, but then the Texans just went on a roll, and from that point on, the Chargers couldn't recover from that. And it was kind of surprising because a lot of people were really giving high praise to the Chargers, saying, oh, they're just going, they're going to beat the Texans in a way. It's a home game. It should be no problem. Texans are, the Chargers get a bye week. And listen, there's no bye week in the playoffs. I know some teams are off, but there is never a bye week in an NFL playoff situation. And that's what the Chiefs and the Lions will come to realize when they get going into playoffs as well. But Justin Herbert, right now, I think he's heading into a conversation that a lot of quarterbacks don't want to be, and that is you can't perform in the playoffs. You struggle. Maybe the spotlight was too big on him. Granted, he was going up against a really good defense in the postseason, but, Justin Herbert, definitely a big factor in the Chargers losing that game. 1 touchdown pass, which was a long touchdown pass, as, unfortunately, this has been a disaster of a game which has ruined a very good, promising season for the Chargers. And I do think Justin Herbert should be able to bounce back. Jim Harbaugh seems to have his team going in the right direction. But at this stage, the Chargers deserve every blame, and Justin Herbert is going to be criticized for this performance, and hopefully he learns from that as some momentum. But at this point, he's heading to a conversation where quarterbacks, where he might not be able to be a success in the playoffs. So that's a bad break for the Chargers. And considering that the Chargers were a threat in the AFC West for multiple years, I don't know if we should ever put the Chargers or Justin Herbert in the same conversation as Patrick Mahomes as far as who's the best quarterback in the AFC West. So I don't think we should definitely put Justin Herbert there. No one in the AFC West is a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Bo Nix is young, and he'll get his moment to shine. And, the Raiders, I'm not sure what their quarterback situation is going to turn out. We'll see who they go with in the NFL draft after the horrific season they had. But there's certainly no one that is a better quarterback in the AFC West than Patrick Mahomes. Can you believe that a few years ago we looked at the AFC West as probably the most competitive conference because of the quarterback play? I mean, it was Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Russell Wilson. Now we got Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, the quarterback for Raiders, who we don't know at this point, and, of course, Bo Nix. And speaking of Bo Nix, I'm going to give a shout-out to Denver. They also made their first playoff appearance in some time, and they took on the Buffalo Bills, and ultimately the Bills came away victorious 31-7, so Buffalo seems to be a real strong team to watch out for in the AFC. But I felt that Denver had a big opportunity to capitalize on their, on a chance to really take the lead. There was that fake punt in which the Broncos pulled off early in the second quarter, a typical Sean Payton-esque type move in the game. And the Broncos were able to keep the drive alive, but they didn't come away with any points, which was a big unfortunate break for them. And then at halftime, or right before halftime, they bring Matt Lutz to try to kick a game-tying field goal to go into the break tied at 10. And it was a good kick, but the ball just hit the upright. And that, unfortunately, was the turning point in the game. The Broncos could never get anything going offensively. And, it was just a really bad break for them. And, Buffalo just went on to take care of business. And something that I just learned today, as of this podcast, was that Bo Nix was actually playing through some fractures in his back. And, he actually got that injury in the first half against the Las Vegas Raiders back in November. And so you have to wonder whether that was certainly, a big factor that he was playing through injuries and everything. But either way, a good season for the Denver Broncos. They made the playoffs, and Bo Nix, certainly a guy that, I thought could have been favored to win Rookie of the Year, but there is someone else that has kind of taken the lead at this point, and we'll get into him in just a moment. So, Denver really had themselves a great season, and, they deserve all the praise. But again, the AFC West is going to get very tighter. Now, obviously, the Chiefs are still the top team, but now it's a question of, can both the teams be able to turn things around, like make it interesting or make it back to the playoffs, or will we see one or both of the teams between the Broncos and the Chargers as well? And going to my third thought of this wild card process, Jayden Daniels. Now, Jayden Daniels is arguably the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. What we saw from him against the Buccaneers in that game says a lot about this incredible quarterback play. Jayden Daniels to this season, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and he is able to lead the Commanders in a big victory on the road against a very good Tampa Bay team that won the NFC South division, even though that division's kind of pretty weak. But the Buccaneers have been to the playoffs before. They had Baker Mayfield. They had Mike Evans. They're a few years off from winning a Super Bowl a couple years back. And this was a Buccaneers team that I think people were thinking was going to find a way to get themselves the victory. And suffice to say, the Washington Commanders pulled off the biggest upset in all the playoffs to this point in the wild card. They're now, this as a 6th seed. They're going to go take on the Detroit Lions. That will be a big, tough game for the Lions, but Jaden Daniels certainly looking to thrive, playing in front of a very hostile environment, which is weird because you don't usually think of Detroit as a hostile environment, but now you kind of look at the Lions as a home field advantage for Detroit. So, what Jaden Daniels has done, he has taken the Washington Commanders, a team that has been mocked at, laughed at, all because of their horrible, terrible owner, Dan Snyder, former owner, Dan Snyder, I should say, because we have now seen the last of him in the NFL. And what he's done is taken that team that has been mocked at for a long time, and he made them into a playoff caliber team. Now, I don't know if we expected the Commanders to make the playoffs right away, but not only were the Commanders in a playoff team, they were at one point the top seed in the NFC. Well, not all of the NFC, but they were actually in first place of the NFC East division. So that's Philadelphia territory. That's Cowboy territory. And, the Giants had a few times where they won the NFC East, but Washington in the NFC East threat, that's insane. And not only that, but you reward yourselves with a hard-fought playoff victory. Man, Jaden Daniels, you are definitely deserving to win the Rookie of the Year, and I would be shocked if you don't. Now, there have been some comparisons between Jaden Daniels and C.J. Stroud's rookie seasons. There's a lot of questions going on about, who had the better rookie season and everything. And, you compare the two players. Jaden Daniels, 3,568 yards, 25 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and led Washington to a 12-5 record, while C.J. Stroud, 4,108 yards, 23 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, and led Houston to a 10-7 record. I mean, you can't make a case, you can make a case for either one that had the better rookie season to this stage. I mean, sure, a lot of fans will look at Jaden Daniels and say 12 wins, in the NFC East, often a tough division. That's remarkable. While the Texans were not supposed to be a playoff team the previous year, and they still ended up winning 10 games and a division, I might add. But it's hard to really say. I don't know if we can ever get a clear-cut answer, but what I would say is this. The two quarterbacks have set the bar high for rookie quarterbacks. Because now, every rookie quarterback that comes in from here on is going to be compared to these two quarterbacks. And people are going to say, well, C.J. Stroud is the bar that he set after last season. No one's going to top that or come close to that. Well, Jaden Daniels has come to that level, maybe eclipsed it in a way. And now people are going to say, well, C.J. Stroud and Jaden Daniels, those are the two exceptions because rookie quarterbacks are going to be, viewed at a lot differently. And the other thing that's crazy, those two were not even supposed to be the best quarterbacks taken in the draft. It was supposed to be Bryce Young at Carolina and, Caleb Williams with Chicago. Now, Bryce Young, I will say, had a better season this year than compared to last year, and we'll see if he can continue that for this upcoming year. While the Bears with Caleb Williams, it was a very not so good year for them. So I do think that, the quarterbacks are going to be able to get better in a sense, but I feel like every quarterback that gets drafted will be compared to Stroud and Daniels, and as to whether or not they can eclipse the bar that both of those quarterbacks have set for rookie quarterbacks in the future. So we'll wait and see on that as the next year's draft comes around, or this upcoming draft comes along. Then we have my fourth thought. I have one more thought after this, and that, of course, is the Steelers. The Steelers are still going to stick with Mike Tomlin, despite the fact that they have lost the last 6 playoff games. And Pittsburgh, it's really unfortunate that they lost because this season was a really good year for Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson, everyone was thinking, he'll have a problem here and there. And then there was a time where they thought, well, maybe they should go to Justin Fields in a way. But as it turns out, the Steelers were able to get themselves in a position early on to win the AFC North Division, but unfortunately, it just hasn't quite worked out that way. They ended up losing to the Ravens at a critical time, And then they get the wild card spot, which of course they have to go to Baltimore. They get down 21-0, and from that point on, everything just was a disaster for Pittsburgh. And so they ended up losing. They lost the game 28-14. And a lot of people are getting sick and tired, of Mike Tomlin, because Mike Tomlin has only been getting by because he's had winning seasons. I don't think he's had a losing season in his career. If that's the case, he's the only coach active to not have a losing season. But Pittsburgh's offense really has been struggling the last 5 games. They didn't score more than 17 points in the last 5 games. T.J. Watt, who was a NFL Defensive Player of the Year at one time, did not even have a single stat against the Ravens. No sack, no tackle, no forced fumble, no interception, no fumble recovery, no tackle for loss, no nothing. He didn't even get a touchdown in the game. I mean, it's just so crazy how the Ravens were able to do a tremendous job of holding him to without a single stat. That's hard to do, for a great player like that. But Pittsburgh, they've just, I don't know what it is about them. Like, they have had some really awful times, even though they continuously put together winning seasons and have either made the playoffs or not made the playoffs. But even when they made the playoffs, they've lost 6 straight games. And then I saw a stat where Mike Tomlin was one and done for 8 times. And look, if you're a head coach and you lose 8 and 8 times you go 0-1 or one and done, that's a bad sign that you really need to go elsewhere. And a lot of fans are probably wanting Mike Tomlin fired, but the Steelers have said that they're not going to this stage. And, it's just unfortunate. Mike Tomlin has become the modern-day equivalent of Marty Schottenheimer, who, mind you, is a great coach during the regular season, but throughout his career, he has always been haunted by not being able to win a single playoff game. Now, Marty's won at least a couple of playoff games, but not to the level, but he's also had 9 one-and-dones in his career. So it's really unfortunate for, Mike Tomlin, who's a great coach, and maybe a guy that should be a Hall of Fame caliber player, but at this point, his legacy is being ruined, and I'm not sure if he can last another year in Pittsburgh. I think the Steelers might be having some serious problems coming in, so I would be very upset. And here, the other thing that's crazy, like, since 1969, since 69, which is about, 31, 56 years ago. For 56 years, the Pittsburgh Steelers have had 3 head coaches. Chuck Noll, who took the Steelers to 4 Super Bowls in the 1970s, Bill Cowher, who was the winningest head coach in all of the 1990s, and Mike Tomlin. They have combined to win all 6 of the Steelers' Super Bowl appearances. It's 6 of 7 Super Bowl appearances, or 6 of 8. I got to remember the one in 95 that Cowher was in. So Pittsburgh won 6 Super Bowls in those 3 coaches, but eventually you're going to have to move on at some point. Mike Tomlin, definitely a bit of a disappointment as of late, but we'll see what Pittsburgh does over the next season, and I'm just not sure if he's going to be there for a long time. And then finally, my final thought of the wild card is the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings were 14-3 during the regular season, which is supposed to be a great record. However, it was not better than the Detroit Lions, who ended up winning the NFC North Division title. And the Vikings, of course, had to go down to, I say go down to Los Angeles, but we got to remember that game was played in Arizona because of the unfortunate wildfire situation that's happening down in L.A. And again, I want to express my thoughts and prayers to the people down there in Los Angeles. Despite our differences, I know that you got some great folks down there, and I hope that everybody is able to go okay, and you can be able to quash the wildfires and then eventually build yourself back up on track, because man, there's no city that should be more entertaining and exciting to be in than Los Angeles, and I hope to go there one day. Sorry, I went off track right there, but anyway, let's talk about the Vikings situation. Sam Darnold had this remarkable year, the best year of his career, and we're all thinking, man, he might have turned his career around. Look at the numbers. 4,319 yards, 35 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, a quarterback rating of 102.5. That's the best season of his career. Compared to his early years when he struggled with the Jets for 3 seasons. He has 2 years in Carolina. That doesn't go anywhere. And then he starts off, plays sparingly with the 49ers, but, it just didn't quite work out in 2023. So he finally goes to Minnesota. He has this remarkable year, and everyone's thinking, man, this is fantastic. Sam Darnold's going to be able to turn his career around, and he might lead the Vikings to maybe the divisional round, maybe NFC Championship. Who knows? But he picked the worst time to go up against, to have his worst game. And that, of course, was against the Los Angeles Rams down in Arizona. He got sacked 9 times. 9 times, and the Vikings ended up getting blown out 27-9. I mean, it's insane. 9 times for a loss of 82 yards. That's a little over 9 yards per loss, and 6 of those happened in the first half. And, we can blame the offensive line here and there, but clearly Sam Darnold might have had his pumpkin moment. Like, how everyone has that magical ride where the pumpkin turns into a carriage and driven by a horse and everything, and it goes for as far as they go. Well, that carriage just turned back into a pumpkin, and I think that's probably what happened in this case. I'm not sure if Sam Darnold will be able to turn his career around, but then, of course, you think about J.J. McCarthy, the guy that was supposed to be the starting quarterback for the Vikings. He might have his opportunity. There's probably going to be a quarterback situation down there, and we will have to wait and see on that in regards to whether or not J.J. McCarthy could be a big factor in next season's career. And, at this stage, Minnesota, the problem with the Vikings is the quarterbacks that they have had have not been as elite as you would like to think. Like, they had Kirk Cousins a couple years ago. Like, Kirk Cousins led them to some remarkable victories, and he ends up, struggling in the playoffs. A couple years ago, they had Case Keenum and Stephon Diggs, who linked up with the Minneapolis Miracle, and then, of course, they get blown out in the championship game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who went on to win the Super Bowl that year, and those two just never could get back into rhythm. I think Minnesota's problem is they're looking for a quarterback that can be able to be as elite, and they might have found one in McCarthy, but it's hard to really know the whole situation because, the Vikings quarterback play has been pretty average at best. We talk about the Chicago Bears and their quarterback struggles. We might talk about the Detroit Lions and their quarterback struggles. The Packers are probably the only team that has had some great quarterbacks. Now, that's probably because over the last 20 years before Jordan Love, we saw Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers really dominate the game for Green Bay and leading them to all those NFC North titles and playoff appearances, plus a few Super Bowls along the way. So I just think with Minnesota, the quarterback play is a big factor. And unfortunately for Justin Jefferson, that's something that he's going to have to consider by the time his contract comes to an end. And he might be thinking about, well, if I can't win here, I might as well go elsewhere. So that's something that I'd be a little curious and worried about if I were a Vikings fan. And next year is going to be real interesting to see what happens with Kevin O'Connell and his staff. How are they going to be able to overcome all this? The Vikings should, just say, okay, do we want to keep Sam Darnold or do we want to go with J.J. McCarthy? And I think you should go with McCarthy just to see what happens there. So I think Minnesota's quarterback play needs to be better, and I just think that, they are a team that has all the weapons that can get to the championship game or Super Bowl, but they just haven't been able to get there. So those are my 5 thoughts from the wild card weekend. Now, I'm going to make my predictions, but I'm only going to predict 3 of the games because I'm going to save the 4th one for my next segment. So as far as the NFC, AFC divisional rounds, we'll start with the NFC divisional games. The Lions are hosting the Washington Commanders, and, it looks like a mismatch in a way because the Detroit has been the best NFC team all season long, or arguably, while the Washington Commanders are coming off a dominant victory. But I certainly would keep an eye out for Jaden Daniels and what he's done for the season. It's just been a tremendous run for Washington to this stage. And even if Washington does lose, I think fans down there should not be disappointed. But Detroit has that game at home, and their fans are going to be ready for the big one, an opportunity to go back to the NFC Championship game and actually host it this time. It's going to be a real tough game for Detroit in a way. The Commanders are coming off such a big victory, but I think the Lions will be okay. I think they should take care of business against the Washington Commanders. So I do think that's going to be a win for the Detroit Lions in the first round to advance. And the Lions' opponent is either going to be the Philadelphia Eagles or Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, of course, a big win over Minnesota. Philadelphia taking care of business against Green Bay. It should be a really tough game for both teams. I know I keep saying that a couple of times in a way, but I just look at this game and I think we should be considering the fact that Philadelphia might be a stronger team. Now, there was definitely a lot of some tension going on early in the season, but the Eagles have kind of turned it around, and I do think they'll still be a big factor for this upcoming season. So I think Philadelphia will advance to take on the Detroit Lions, which should be a really good game. And then for my one AFC divisional game, which I'll talk about the other one in the next segment, Baltimore and Buffalo. That is going to be the big game for this playoffs. You have the leading two MVP candidates in Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. That should be a game that will definitely get everyone on their feet. Now, game's going to be played in Buffalo, so we'll see if Lamar Jackson can handle playing in the cold weather Buffalo, in a sense. I mean, the Bills are looking to get back to the AFC Championship game after missing out the last time and maybe getting themselves a revenge against the Chiefs, while the Baltimore Ravens are looking to get back to the AFC Championship game for the second year in a row and are also looking for revenge against the Chiefs. Of course, there's that other team in Houston, but we'll wait on that in just a moment. But I look at this as probably the game of the playoffs. I really do. I think the Bills and the Ravens are going to draw a lot of interest, and they're going to draw a lot of fans, and it's going to be a battle for who really is deserving of the MVP. I mean, the MVP between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson might have already been decided in the regular season, but I think it may be one final look for fans to decide, okay, whoever wins, was that quarterback the right winner, or was the other quarterback the one that we should have voted for, depending on how this game goes as well. So, I mean, you're looking at this game, and Buffalo does have a lot of good momentum, but so too do the Ravens. I'm going to go ahead and say that the Ravens slightly beat the Bills. I would not be surprised if Buffalo gets there, but I do think that the Baltimore Ravens will get back to the AFC Championship game, and we'll be looking for potential revenge against the Kansas City Chiefs if the Chiefs get there in a way. So for now, the three winners I got in this segment, I have Detroit, Philadelphia, and Baltimore. And folks, I'm going to take it aside, step out for a minute. When I come back, I'm going to be talking about the fourth divisional round game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back. Folks, I believe it was on my last podcast, my last episode, when I was talking about my New Year's resolutions, things I wanted. One of the things that I had said and that I had hoped for this year in terms of sports upcoming matches is a matchup between the Houston Texans and the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. And folks, we got that matchup. Now, I wish it would have been in the AFC Championship game, but hey, you know what? It is what it is. AFC Divisional Round, the fourth matchup of the Divisional Round, pits my Houston Texans against the Kansas City Chiefs. An opportunity for the Houston Texans to knock off the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Chiefs. Now, before we talk about this matchup, we do have some news to report earlier from the Texans' perspective. They have actually waived wide receiver Deontay Johnson from the team. And this is shocking because the Texans were in need of some wide receiver help with all the injuries that they had with Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell going down with injuries, lost for the year. They needed some receiver help. They ended up signing Deontay Johnson, who has been on 3 different teams this year, folks. I'm not going to lie. He's been on 3 teams prior to signing with the Texans. He started out with the Steelers. He got cut there. He gets picked up by Carolina, gets cut there. He then joins the Baltimore Ravens, but then gets waived. And then he now joins the Texans, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we got some wide receiver help. This should be good. Well, 2 games later, he's been waived for the 4th time this season. And I got to tell you what, I was very shocked when I saw this. But then I started to read more about, what exactly was going on. And it seems like in the playoff game against the Rams, he wasn't too happy about, not getting enough touches and everything. And even when the Texans were winning that game, he just was very upset and complaining. Some of the teammates tried to calm him down, but he just wasn't having it. And so the Texans are like, yeah, sorry, big loss. So, yeah, after 2 games, Deontay Johnson has been waived. And this has to be a bit of concern for Houston's perspective because they do need some wide receiver help. Outside of Nico Collins, who has been lighting up the numbers this year. I mean, who else do they have? Xavier Hutchinson, John Mechie, who has had some struggles during his time. Dalton Schultz, who's a tight end. And then, unfortunately, Cade Stover, one of CJ's top targets and the other tight end, is out with a broken collarbone. So he's been placed on IR. So Texans are going to be a little bit thin at the wide receiver position. But, I think for the Texans to really have a chance to beat the Chiefs, obviously, from an offensive perspective, they just got to run the ball with Joe Mixon more. And that's going to be a challenge with the Texans and the defense, or the Texans and the Chiefs defense going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Because it always seems like even when the Chiefs are not at their best, they find ways to win. And that's what makes Kansas City a great team. 15-3 this season. Most of the games have been very one score, very close. Fans might say, well, the Chiefs gotten some breaks here and there because of the refs and all that. Listen, it's like saying you have to overcome the psychology of that. You have to overcome that fear of, the potential that the Chiefs are being held by the Ravens. That's just paranoia talking. That's like a team losing because they're concerned that somebody is stealing signs, even if that has been proven that stuff didn't really matter, didn't really have much of an effect. I won't get into discussions on that anymore. But here we are, folks. Texans and the Chiefs. And already people have said that the Texans have no chance whatsoever of winning. If you may recall last week, Rex Ryan, former head coach of the New York Jets, said to everyone that he couldn't believe the Chargers had a bye week. A bye week. They're playing the Texans in the wild card round, and he thinks the Chargers are going to advance onward to the next round. Oh, boy. Imagine what happened, in that regards. What happened there? Oh, yeah, the Texans won. They flat out kicked the Chargers, what. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. But already we have people saying that the Texans have no chance and everything. And look, I think the Texans have a chance. It may not be the best chance. It may not be a 1%, or it may not be a 15% chance. Hey, it is the Chiefs and everything, but the Texans do have a chance. Because 1 out of 10 times, I think the Texans do beat the Chiefs. Now, you might say the odds would be better if Diggs and Dell were both playing, but hey, it's still a chance. It's playoff football. Anything can happen in a way. But here's the thing about this matchup that has been of an intriguing perspective. The thing that catches my attention as far as the reason why I wanted this matchup so badly is that I like to look at things from a historical perspective. And I know you might say, well, what does that have to do with, this situation this year? To me, this almost feels like the matchup, a situation that happened years ago between 2 other teams. And I'm talking, of course, about the Dallas Cowboys and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, bear with me, folks. Let me tell you the reason why I think about this matchup in a way. So, in the 1980s, in the early 80s, the 49ers met the Dallas Cowboys in the NFC Championship game of 1981 or 1982. By this stage, the Cowboys were, a couple years removed from winning another Super Bowl, and then also, Roger Staubach was not there. Danny White was the quarterback, but the Cowboys still had some great players, while the 49ers were kind of seen as an up-and-coming team. And that game, of course, was the great game in which Joe Montana hit Dwight Clark for the play that everyone knows as the catch, when Dwight Clark jumped as high as he could to make a remarkable catch that ultimately defeated the Cowboys 28-27. So the 49ers win that game, and that was the game that propelled their dynasty to win 4 Super Bowls in the 1980s, while it propelled the Cowboys to a decade of mediocrity and then, unfortunately, the toilet bowl in a sense. So the Cowboys were struggling and they couldn't get anything going. And then, of course, we have the arrival of Jerry Jones, who buys the team and forces Tom Landry out as head coach. And Tom Landry was a beloved figure for the city of Dallas and the Cowboys, even though the game sort of passed him by at that stage. And Landry's a Cowboys legend, but the way they did it, I'm sure if Jerry Jones had to do it all over again, he would have done things differently. But Jerry Jones buys the Cowboys. He hires Jimmy Johnson, and, Jimmy Johnson, who had won national championships at the University of Miami, is brought in to be the head coach of the Cowboys. 1989 was the worst year for the Cowboys in a long time. They went 1-15, but the big highlight of that year was when the Cowboys pulled off a stunning trade with the Minnesota Vikings, where they traded Herschel Walker, their only Pro Bowl player, their running back, to Minnesota in exchange for 5 players plus a number of draft picks. And within each of the 5 players they got back, if they were to cut that player, they got a pick out of that, another draft pick. So the Cowboys basically had multiple loads of draft picks. And within the draft, they were able to draft some of the key players. They drafted Emmitt Smith. They drafted Darren Woodson. They drafted, other great players. I can't remember who. Russell Maryland was another player that the Cowboys drafted. Players that would be huge assets to helping them win 3 Super Bowls in the dynasty. Now, in the decade. Now, the Cowboys were climbing up to the top of the NFL. And at the top of the NFL was, of course, the San Francisco 49ers. In 1992, the 49ers were back in the NFC Championship game after winning 4 Super Bowls. Steve Young was still the quarterback of the team, or was the quarterback after Joe Montana got replaced. And the two teams, ironically enough, met each other in an NFC Championship game in 1992, and that was another classic game. This time, the Cowboys won 30-20 in one of the greatest games ever played, and that would be the end of the 49ers dynasty and would start the rise of the Cowboys dynasty. Now, think about it this way. This game, there's some similarities here between the two teams of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans, in contrast to the 49ers and the Cowboys in this situation. Let's go back 5 years ago when the last time these two teams met in the playoffs. The Chiefs and the Texans were both up-and-coming teams, and it seemed like that game in particular, one team was going to get to the top while the other team was going to go down in mediocrity. Well, after the first quarter, or after maybe 18 minutes in the game, it looked like it was going to be the Texans because they had themselves a 24-0 lead. And you're thinking, wow, this is great. This was the best the Texans played all game long. Well, Kansas City scored 28 points in the second quarter, and then they ended up winning the game 51-31, sending the Texans into Heartbreak City. And that's what led Kansas City to win their first Super Bowl, and then they would continue to build on their success and be the most successful franchise at the start of the 2020s, in a way. So right now you have the Chiefs, who are the 2-time Super Bowl champions, looking to win their 3rd Super Bowl in a row. Meanwhile, the Houston Texans have been, went down in this dark period where they struggled with losing seasons. But within those losing seasons, two similar things happened that made them look like the Dallas Cowboys in this story. One is they hired a new head coach, one that was tough and disciplined, but very passionate, in D'Amico Ryans, who ironically was a former player for the Texans and was also a defensive coordinator with the 49ers. He brings in a very good, talented load of energy. The other thing that happened was that the Texans pulled off this big trade with the Cleveland Browns, sending the picks, receiving the picks from the Browns for Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson was not happy with the way management was going. He thought he knew better. And then, of course, there was a whole massage situation that was taking place. And so the Texans ended up trading Deshaun Watson to the Browns. They get a lot of picks left. And they're able to wheel and deal with a general manager who has done a tremendous job building a team to what it is now, although there are still some pieces that they would need to elevate themselves even more. And the Texans right now were able to turn things around probably quicker than expected. But they have a franchise quarterback, arguably, in C.J. Stroud. They have some other key pieces. And right now they are in position to potentially knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. In some ways, this story arc is kind of similar to the Cowboys 49ers from 1981 to 1992, whereas this is a story arc that has come full circle from 2019 to 2025. The only way that this would complete the similarity is one of two things. Number one, the Texans beat the Chiefs, and number two, they go on to win the Super Bowl. Now, it's hard to kind of process, everything, because clearly the Houston Texans are going to be underdogs. At the earliest, the Vegas odds had them about 7.5, 8-point underdogs, which is very fair because the game's at Arrowhead, and the Texans do have some notable players missing and all that. But for me, this is a matchup that I wanted. And I'm not saying that because I was scared of the Bills or the Ravens. I know the Ravens had shellacked the Texans on Christmas Day. I wasn't, I would much rather play the Chiefs now, because this is an opportunity for the Texans to not only beat the Chiefs, but to get to their first ever AFC Championship game. They are the only team in the AFC South that has never been to an AFC Championship game. That's embarrassing. Like, when there are four teams and you're the only one that hasn't gotten there. Now, you're only fortunate is that the Jaguars have not been to a Super Bowl, and you're also fortunate that the Jaguars and Titans have not won a Super Bowl. The Indianapolis Colts are the only team in the AFC South that has won a Super Bowl. So, but this is a big opportunity for the Texans to reach the AFC Championship game. And it is going to be, a big momentum shift. Like, if the Texans pull this off, that would be huge. But it's going to take a lot for them to go right. Obviously, C.J. Stroud will need to play very well, and the offense will need to, put up a lot of points, more so than 32. The defense is going to have to continue playing great. Now, considering the fact that the Texans, were, maybe not as healthy as defense, because again, they don't have Jalen Petrie, who is out with an injury for the season. Jimmy Ward is also out for injury for the season. And oh, by the way, Azeez Al-Shaair, who wasn't even playing that game because he was serving a 3-game suspension, fair or unfair, is actually back on the field. So, from a defensive perspective, this is going to be a very big challenge for the Texans. How do you limit Patrick Mahomes? Because Mahomes always seems to have magic within his arm. He does have the weapons. He also has a former Texan on his team in DeAndre Hopkins. It's going to be a very, very tough challenge. But here's the way I see it. I feel like at some point, the Texans are going to have to break through this. I feel like at some point that the Texans are going to have to break through and win the game to get to the AFC Championship game. This might be a great opportunity. But if not, you have to hope that next year or the year after they get back to this situation and they are able to, get through to the AFC Championship game because they're going to get there eventually. But man, this would be a remarkable opportunity for Houston. This is the biggest game in franchise history. And the Texans have played in some big games, nothing bigger than this. An opportunity to knock off the Kansas City Chiefs. Can you imagine what the storylines would be if the Kansas City Chiefs were to lose this game to the Texans? Holy crap, the Houston Texans are in the AFC Championship game. And the Kansas City Chiefs are not there. Like, wow. That would be so remarkable, like, if this were to happen. Like, it would be a big shock. Now, of course, it's going to be really tough. And it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays itself out. Because, again, the Texans, the last time the two teams played earlier this season, they ended up losing by 8 points. But, the fact of the matter is, this is a Houston team that was actually very close. They were in the game with Kansas City. They actually had scored a touchdown with Tank Dell, but on the play he got injured. That made the score 17-16. But then from that point on, everything just kind of went all for naught, and Houston ended up losing 27-19. Like, the Texans can play with the Chiefs. They played in some very close games with Kansas City. Of course, the thing that I would say the Texans would need to do, they need to get on the Chiefs early, because Kansas City, they've been out for, well, like they say 2 weeks, but really the starters have been out for 3 weeks. And 3 weeks without playing a single game in football, if you're Patrick Mahomes, if you're Travis Kelce, if you're Chris Jones, if you're any of the other starters on the Chiefs, and you haven't played in a game for 3 weeks, that is a little concerning. You're very rusty. You're very, you can sit out in a way, and you might have some struggles early on. But ultimately, what makes the Chiefs so good is that they find ways to win the game. And Andy Reid, who has proven to be the best head coach in recent years, will certainly have his guys ready to go. And, guys, I don't know what else to say about this matchup. I mean, this is a matchup that I truly believe, this is what I wanted, and this is what I feel like needs to, happen. I think the Texans need to get this win so they can move on. But I also hope that if the Texans don't win it this year, that I don't want any other team, unless it's the Detroit Lions, to win the Super Bowl. I don't want any other team to beat the Chiefs, because I feel like the Texans deserve an opportunity. Now, if Baltimore and Buffalo do beat the Chiefs next week, you know what? Tip your hats to them. But I'm really hoping that it's Houston, because, man, we got to get a shot. We got to be the team that puts an end to the nightmare for the Chiefs. Because until we beat Kansas City, we're not going to be able to live down 24-0. That's the reality of the situation. And I just feel like this is an opportunity for us. But I also hope that we get another opportunity to play Kansas City. Because I'm telling you what, as great as Kansas City has been, and they are still the favorites to win, there's going to come a point where their run's going to come to an end. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be this year. I think Kansas City will still be a strong team for the next few years. But ultimately, at some point, you're going to have to take down the big bully. Just like the 49ers with Steve Young took down the Cowboys, who beaten them in 2 straight NFC Championship games. Just like Michael Jordan defeating the Detroit Pistons after the Pistons beat the Bulls for 3 straight years until the Bulls finally got their revenge. This is a perfect opportunity, I feel. So, all that to say, I think this is going to be a really good game. I think it's going to be closer than most people think. But as far as my prediction for this one goes, I'm only doing this so that I hope that the Texans prove me wrong. But I'm going to have to pick Kansas City for this one. I think it'll be a close game. But I can only hope that Houston shuts everyone down. And I can only hope that they are able to stand up, fight, and get the big playoff win against the Chiefs. But other than that, I just hope we get another opportunity if we fall short. So, all that to say, I think this game has all the makings to be a big upset this week. You think about some of the great upsets. The Oilers in '79 upset the red-hot San Diego Chargers in the divisional round. You think about the Steelers in 2005 upsetting the Indianapolis Colts in the divisional round, on their way to a Super Bowl, I might add. And you also think about, trying to say of another upset that comes to mind. 1996, Jaguars over the Broncos. Jaguars, a second-year expansion team, defeating the top-seeded Denver Broncos 30-27 to win and go to the AFC Championship game. In their second year. That is totally insane. So the Kansas City Chiefs are in a little bit of pressure. I think they got more to lose than the Texans. That's not to say I don't think the Chiefs will win. I think I'm picking the Chiefs to win this game. But man, if the Texans do win, hell will freeze over and Houston will go crazy. Because at some point the Texans are going to get there. I feel confident that they're going to get there. But we'll wait and see with regards to next week. Now, folks, I'm going to step aside. Well, when I come back, I'm going to talk about a subject that has been on my mind lately, and it's a little bit more personal. So bear with me, folks. I'm stepping aside, but we'll be right back after this. So January the 11th is a special day in my family because that is my mother's birthday. And my mom turned 63, so happy belated birthday, Mom. And, you know, I wasn't able to be with her because I had to work the Lamar women's basketball game. And that was a pretty big game against a former Southwind Conference rival of ours who actually is back in the Southwind Conference. So they're now rivals of ours, Stephen F. Austin. It was a really great game, back and forth. And in the end, we were fortunate enough to pull out the victory, 77-74. So a really great win for our girls there to maintain an undefeated record in conference play for now. But you had the Texans game. Of course, the Texans ended up winning. And my mom actually went to the Texans playoff game. So I'm kind of jealous because my mom and my dad have been going to Texans games lately. And I've really wanted to go to one, but you know, just with the schedule and everything, it's kind of hard to, because most of the games are during the fall season, and usually I have to work soccer games during the fall, which I mean, I don't mind doing it, but you know, I would love to go to a game at some point. Hopefully, maybe there's a Monday night game that I can go to, potentially. But anyway, so January the 11th, there were some good things that happened that day, but there was always something that had been on my mind that has been kind of bothering me for a couple of years now. And one of my close friends actually got engaged. And this was someone that I hadn't spoken to, I've been in contact with her, but I haven't really talked to her in a number of years. We are in different cities now. And to tell you the truth, she got engaged, and to tell you the truth, I'm not really too happy about it. Now, let me explain what I mean. I'm not saying that I don't have any I don't hate her now fiance. I mean, I never met the guy personally. I don't hate him. I mean, and again, I don't really have any particular feelings for this person. For this girl that, is a friend of mine. But I guess you could say with what's going on in my life, it's just kind of been bothering me. The notion that throughout my entire life, I've always had female friends, like some really good female friends, and I've been pretty close to some of them. And I think my biggest problem is, if I get close to a girl, there's a good chance that she's going to break my heart because, she's always going to see me as this friend and everything. And I think that's what's happened here. She was always going to see me as a friend, and it's always going to hurt me, whenever a girl would come up, if I had any interest in them, they would say, "Oh, Carrick, I think you're sweet and nice and kind, but I would rather just be friends." I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my life personally or if I'm just not as mature enough, but to me, I feel pretty hurt, about this situation. And let me give you a breakdown of this situation with my friend. So I met this girl in college, and actually, she was like in sororities, they have like an older sister, or not biologically sister, but they have like an elder person for someone that was trying to get into the sorority, and they'll have like a mentor or something like that. Like if you're in a sorority, or you knew someone that was in a sorority, they'll know what I'm talking about. But someone that's like a mentor and everything. This was a mentor to one of my really good friends, a really close friend of mine, who tragically passed away from difficult situations. And, I've been very close to this person and everything. And, we just, we kind of hit it off, and, we became really good friends in college. She's like a year or so older than me. So she graduated a year earlier. She went to Dallas, and, she'd been there a number of years, and she ended up going to Austin. And there was a period where I didn't really get in contact with her as much, because I was kind of worried that I started seeing her in a different light. And with me and, my insecurities around being with, women, the fear of rejection, the fear of, I'm not going to find that special someone in my life. I didn't want it to be her, in a way, because I figured that she knew me as someone, she knew me as a friend and everything. And even if there was part of me that might have thought about her in a different light, I didn't want that. I had to protect my heart. So I didn't talk to her for a number of months. I didn't follow her. And I said, hey, I'm just going to, give us a break, and then come back in a few months or so, or whenever I'm ready to maybe talk to her. So about a few months go by, and then I finally follow her, and, she noticed that, and we talked, and I told her, I was seeing her in a different way, and I didn't like that. So I had to kind of stay away from her, and, everything seems to be going great. But, over time, our jobs kind of took over, and she ended up moving down to Austin. And, we were supposed to meet up one summer in particular, and, I was hoping to maybe get some time down with her, because it was right when my sister had been invited to a wedding, and my parents were going to drive her down, and they were going to go to this wedding as well. They told me, hey, you can take the car, you can go down, whatever, but just make sure you come back in a couple hours. I said, okay, no problem. So I decided, hey, why not try to meet up with this person? But then, my friend, it was really kind of hard to get a time to meet up together. I went down to Austin, drove around for a bit, hoping to, find an opportunity to see her, but it just didn't quite work out. And eventually I had to go back to get my parents and my sister. And then, my friend had texted me, said, hey, you still want to meet up, with somebody and all that. And I said, no, maybe next time. It just didn't quite work out in a way. And then, so I said, but don't worry, we'll hang out together. We'll find some time together as well. And then about, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of weeks later, that's when I found out that she was actually seeing somebody. And, it kind of hurt me, because deep down, my thing is, I really wish that you would tell me that you were seeing somebody. I mean, that you would just call me and, tell me and say, hey, you're always my friend and everything, but I really want you to know that I am seeing somebody and I'm really having a good time. And I was hurt that she didn't do that. And that really upset me, and it really put a little bit of a damper in my thoughts about it. It started making me have some doubts as to whether or not I want to, continue being friends with her. And at that point, I just didn't know what to do. And so I said, look, I'm just going to let them continue dating and everything. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. In this relationship, it's still kind of young. I don't want to assume anything. I mean, I want her to be happy, but I don't want to get too involved, because I don't want to feel like I'm trying to be a distraction in this relationship in a way. And so I decided just, to give her her space, let her enjoy this relationship. And, over time I might, contact and say, hey, how's it going and everything. And, just kind of go with that and nothing more. But over time, it was really becoming clearer and clearer that she really liked this guy, and it was hurting me inside. And not again, I didn't have anything on her, but I was really struggling to come to grips with this notion, and that's when I started to really question whether or not like if she was to be engaged to this guy. And if she decided to invite me to her wedding. Now, she hasn't done any wedding reservations and all that yet. Like, she has not had a date set up. But if hypothetically saying that if she were to invite me to this wedding, what would I do? Would I want to go? Would I not want to go? What would I do? And you guys would say, well, wait a minute now. If you're friends with her, then you should go and be supportive of her. And yes, I've been to a number of weddings with other friends, other female friends, but it wasn't like I was close, but I wasn't as close with them as I was to this girl in particular. But it's kind of bothering me because deep down, I'm still kind of hurt by the fact that she didn't tell me about it and that she wasn't honest. And some days it makes me question if we were really friends or not, if I was just being used as someone else. And I just really have a hard time with that sometimes. And maybe that's just part of the reason why I kind of have guarded my heart to where, I don't know if I can trust another girl or trust any one of my friends. And it does kind of bother me, and it was really making me upset, when I found out. How did I find out? Well, I found out a couple of days ago on Instagram, actually January the 11th. And, someone had actually somebody else posted a story on their Instagram saying that, she has a dog, and it's a beautiful dog, but she said that this particular dog, I won't give away the name, but this dog is getting a daddy. And a second I saw that and I saw her hand with the engagement ring, I just knew right then and there that, she got engaged. And I decided to unfollow them on Instagram and social media. I know it sounds like it's a terrible move and everything, but it just shows you how really frustrated and angry I am at this stage. And I haven't really contacted her to congratulate her and everything, although I really, I probably will at some point, but I don't know. My whole life is just really, it's just frustrating me to me at this stage. I mean, I'm embarrassed with how my life has gone in certain ways. I'm doing my best hosting a podcast, and I know I'm not getting as much traction as I would like. I know you have to have fortunate breaks go your way, and I haven't gotten that when it comes to this podcast. I know I have another one with my colleague, and we've had generated a lot, not as much as, the Shannon Sharps, the Pat McAfees, and all that, but it's just been frustrating. Like, it's so frustrating, like, when you find out that, hey, your co-host is starting to see someone. And it's so frustrating when you find out, hey, guess what? A family, with 3 beautiful kids, and 2 of them are dating, and the oldest child doesn't even have a date. It's so frustrating. Like, it shouldn't matter at this point, but, I don't know. I just get so frustrated and so irritated with how my life has turned out to be, because as much as this particular individual that I've been friends with getting engaged to the guy that she obviously likes hurts me, it would not be the worst one, because there will be someone else that I'm pretty sure is dating, and I know I've talked about this particular individual in the past, and it's going to hurt me more. And it's just going to make me question it whether or not I really want to, be supportive of at their wedding and everything. And I don't know what else to say. I mean, I know I'm kind of stuttering over my words here, trying to give out my thoughts and everything, because this feels like this feels like a pointless argument. Like, you're probably going to say, hey, you need to go. Like, if you are invited, you should go. Be supportive of them. It's going to make me uncomfortable. And I've been to a lot of weddings where I never go to the ceremony. I only go to the reception. And I know that comes as a shock to a lot of people, but that's just the way I am. I cannot, for the life of me, be at a wedding where I'm sitting in the audience and I see the bride and groom. I cannot stand to see that moment. I've been there a couple of times. I've done that, and just to be supportive of them. It's because I never had an interest in the bride at any point. But sometimes it's hard for me to even be there because it makes me embarrassed because it feels like I'm never going to get that opportunity. And I've tried starting online dating, and it's just so hard because you feel like you're talking to someone that's not really there, or they're not themselves, or it's just a bot that you're talking to, and it's just so frustrating. Like, everything seems to be pointing in favor of the women, okay? Now, I'm sorry that I can't help that I sound like a robot at times. I'm sorry that I can't help that I'm so, that I don't have the best looks. And I'm trying to work out as much as I can, but it's just not, I don't know. I'm just embarrassed with myself in some areas. And, people say, well, you have to have confidence. You have to feel confident in yourself. And I'm trying to get there, but I know there's some areas in my life that I'm not happy with, and I'm trying to improve on those, but it's just so frustrating. But so I was watching a clip, and this is supposed to be from a movie. It was called What Love Is. Apparently it's a comedy movie, but it has Matthew Lillard, Cuba Gooding Jr. I have not seen this movie, but Sean Astin, who is one of my all-time favorite actors, the guy that played Sam Goodwin, or Sam from Lord of the Rings. He was Rudy, which is from one of my all-time favorite movies, and then he was also in The Goonies. And so he's done some good movies, but he's in this movie. And he did a scene. He was doing a scene about how, there's this so-called 11th man theory. And I watched this scene, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really remarkable. This is great, like touching subject. And, I think he was spitting facts. But I'm going to play this particular clip from this movie. And I want you guys to react to it. I want you guys to say, hey, what do you guys like? Do you agree with Sean's opinion in this one? So this is from his character talking about how there's supposed to be an 11th man theory. So here it is.
Say there's a woman in a room with 10 men, and all 10 men are telling her how beautiful she is and how amazing she is, and they're lighting her cigarette and buying her drinks and just treating her like gold. Then, all of a sudden, in walks the 11th man. He takes one look at her and says, hey, how you doing? Turns his back on her and starts talking to his boys. That's the guy she wants to be with, the 11th man. Not any of the 10 men who were treating her well all night, but the one guy who couldn't care less. For some reason, women don't want nice. They don't want real. They don't want to be treated well. I mean, not at first, and sometimes not ever. I think that's crazy, and I refuse to play that game. Get a girl by pretending that I don't like her. I want to be with a woman who's real, who digs it when I'm nice to her, who doesn't see that as weakness, or take me for granted when I tell her that I think she's more amazing than anything else in the entire world. But fortunately, most women aren't like that. They say they are, and deep down inside, they want to be, but they're not.
Yeah. I can only agree with it. I mean, I feel like that the whole 11th man theory does come to exist because it seems like every guy tries to be real nice, be respectful to a woman, but it seems like women have a tendency to go with people that don't seem to care, and it just draws them in. I don't know if that's entirely true or not, but, it's almost like at times for us guys, especially for single guys that are in their 30s that have never had a relationship with someone, we're playing a losing game. We don't know what we're doing. Like, we don't know how to do it. Like, we don't know how to treat a girl. Like, we treat them as nice as we can, but we just don't know how to win their hearts and win their affections in a way. And that's just what's really frustrating to me, and it just makes me very upset having to do all I can to try. I mean, I've been on some, I don't want to call them dates necessarily, but get-togethers, if you will, with some of my female friends. And, I not necessarily was trying to win them over, although I might have been getting some practice in, just how to be around them in a situation to where I can prepare myself to be sitting at a dinner table or just taking in a movie with a nice girl, as a date. And that's just, I mean, it's just hard, like, and I get so mad about it, just thinking that I'm doing all I can, but it's just not worth enough. And yeah, they say, oh, your time hasn't come, God's got someone special for you, but I don't know. Ask that to anyone that had never had a relationship. Did God have someone special for them, or was their plan never to be married? Because I don't know. But I don't know what to say. At this particular moment, I haven't really talked to her. I don't know if I'm gonna talk to her for some time, and I'm starting to question whether or not I need to stop being friends with her and just let her live her life. She hasn't said anything to me at this point, but I'm really questioning whether or not I need to cut some people out of my life and at this stage. And I don't want to do that, but it's just hard when everybody that is mature, they're living the life that you wish you could have. But my biggest thing is I'm struggling to decide whether or not I want to be normal like everyone else or whether I want to stand out. And that's always been a big fight in my head. But seeing a friend like that get engaged to someone and her having not the courage to tell me about it, it just makes me upset. And with this other girl that, I spoke about, and saying that, she does get engaged to someone, I'm going to be really upset and it's going to really break my heart. The one thing I will say about her, she had the audacity to tell me that she was dating somebody. And yeah, it hurt me. It hurt me a lot. But I respect her for that. But, I don't know. I'm not saying all this to say I wish, I could get a date. I'm not asking for any dates and all that. I don't want y'all to feel sorry for me, because I don't think anybody that listens to it or anybody that cares to listen would feel sorry for me. And I don't blame you. I'm not doing that. But it just hurts me knowing that I have a tough decision to make with my with some of my friendships and everything, and I want to keep it up. Now, when I say cut this person out of my life, does that mean I want to cut them out forever? No, and I do hope eventually that we can rebuild that trust, but right now I'm just kind of hurt inside, and I just don't know if I can really put my trust with this person. And so that's the way I look at it right now. A friend of mine just got engaged, and I should be happy for her, but I'm really not. And I don't know. I guess I just don't know what it's like to be in love. My sister, my brother are both dating somebody, and I like their boyfriend and girlfriend. My sister's dating a boyfriend, my brother's dating a girlfriend, and I like those people. Don't get me wrong, but it's just hard when you've been the oldest child for your entire life and you've had to deal with this disability that is sometimes make you question everything. It makes you feel like you're out of touch with reality at times, and you're trying to be back in touch with reality. But I just wish I had a do-over on my life and I could make some big changes. Trust me, I know everybody does, but I really wish I could. So right now, I'm kind of hurt by the whole engagement thing, and I haven't talked to this person. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know what I'm going to do, but you guys let me know what you think I should do. And if you guys want to chew me out and tell me that I'm an idiot for, saying all this, go ahead. Chew me out. Tell me I'm an idiot. Tell me I'm wrong. Because as far as I'm concerned, I do feel like I need to be chewed out. I do feel like I need to be mature enough, and I'm trying to get there. But I don't know. I guess I'm just tired of having my heart broken again and again and again. So, but I'm gonna be okay. I don't know what the deal with my friendship with this person is, but we'll see. But anyways, guys, I'm going to end my podcast there. Thank you guys for listening in. Hey, we got some great football games that we're going to watch. I'm hoping the Texans can pull off the upset against the Chiefs. I feel like they're going to. I picked the Chiefs to win, but I feel like, I've got a gut feeling the Texans could do it. And if not this year, then I hope it's next year, and I hope they get to the Super Bowl eventually because, man, Houston needs some championships. And I'm not saying a lot, but they do need some just to make them feel special and to make the fans feel pretty happy. So with that being said, guys, thank you very much. Again, you can listen to this podcast at my YouTube channel, KW Klein, CLINE 91, and also with Spotify and Podbean. So guys, keep it real. I'll see you guys next time on another episode of Krocking, Locking, and Dropping with the K-Rock.